Prisoners is a dark psychological thriller by the French-Canadian director Denis Villeneuve. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal, who plays a detective investigating the case of two missing girls. Hugh Jackman plays a desperate parent who takes matters into his own hands. Violence, revenge, the question of torture are just some of this movie's themes. Variety calls it a spellbinding and sensationally effective thriller with a complex moral center. Here is the trailer for Prisoners. As the director, Denis Villeneuve, and one of the film's stars, Jake Gyllenhaal, I am pleased to have them at the table. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. Just tell us how this movie came into being. What was it that so attracted you to the story?
Oh, basically, it's just that when I read the screenplay, I was totally amazed and profoundly disturbed by what it was saying about our society today. And myself, I'm very afraid of violence, and I think that with cinema allows me to explore things that I'm afraid of, to try to understand them, and I think that Prisoner's screenplay was a beautiful exploration of violence and our relationship with violence. And then I fell in love with it. I had the same kind of approach that the producer wanted the movie to be. And Hugh Jackman, I had a meeting here in New York with Hugh Jackman, and we just got along quickly because basically I think he felt really comfortable about the way I wanted to approach violence in the movie, my responsibility toward violence, the way I wanted to depict it in the screen. Yeah.
See, that's easy to get, Hugh. What's really difficult is to get Jake Gyllenhaal. That's a hard one.
It's a tough one, and then you have a burden in your shoulder,
hard
and you have to do
catch,
it.
Need a thick line, a big hook. Yeah.
So you saw the script. Did you say, I got to do this, or did you have reservations?
We were making another, Denis and I were making another film. Yeah, an Enemy.
Right.
We were in the middle of making that film, which was an extraordinary experience. It was an incredible collaboration artistically. We would sort of discover things as we went, and we would finish the day off, go have dinner, get a little drunk, and then discuss more, wake up the next morning. It would evolve the scenes or the situations in the movie that we were working on. And he came to me one day. I thought at first it was a little bit of a joke, and he said, you know, I'm doing this next movie with Hugh Jackman, and I would love for you to play a part in it. And really, truly, it was the relationship that we had made on that movie and his, how do I say, just his garnering of trust over that period of time that made me say, I just want to continue to work with this guy. That was the initial impression, and the response I had was, I just want to work with him again. Then I read the script, and I was blown away by just the puzzle of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he really wanted me to play the narrator in a way of the whole piece, which the detective often is.
Right.
And he said, I really want to find a real character in there. And since we had been doing that on An Enemy, I said, I would love to.
Tell me the story.
Of Prisoners?
Yes.
Basically, it's a story of two families that are struggling with something horrible, which is they are losing, both of them, one of their daughters. Right. One of their daughter. And both fathers, they try to make one of the main suspects talk because the police doesn't have enough clues to keep
There is your violence.
And exactly, yeah.
But what's interesting about it is that it's not only the violence, but it is the fact that you have here, because they think the children are kidnapped and they may still be alive. So there's a sense of a race against time.
Exactly. And for me, it's important to say it's not a revenge movie. It's not about revenge. It's not about vengeance. It's about struggling with a massive pressure, and those characters doesn't trust their own institutions. They don't trust the police, and they decide to take justice in their own hands and try to make the investigation move forward by themselves.
Because they believe it's not moving fast, and the time element. They know that if it's after a week, it's less likely they'll be found alive. After a month, it's almost certain.
At the beginning.
After what?
72 hours. I mean, there's a time frame every basically hour that goes by over the first few days. You know, it becomes harder and harder to find the suspect and rescue. You know, particularly in this case, the children that are involved. You know, one of the things that Hugh Jackman did a lot of research on was, and actually did some improvisation in the movie with me in particular, was this period of time that passes when an abduction first happens. You know, if it's not found within the first 24 hours. And he says it in the movie. And he says it to me as a threat almost. But there is an inherent tension as soon as these girls are abducted in the film that, in my opinion, narratively carries the whole movie. Because,
mine too.
Yeah, I mean, you're just constantly, it's just tension at every moment just based on that pure fact, which is enough to carry anything, really.
Before we talk about that, tell me about your character, Detective Lloyd. I mean, how'd you see him? What was your...
Well, I had done a lot of research in law enforcement. I'd spent 6 months making a movie called End of Watch, which is about 2 police officers, 2 movies before this, before I did this movie. And so I had spent 6 months with law enforcement, LAPD and Sheriff's Department in Los Angeles, spending, you know, five nights a week with them on the streets with different sets of partners. So I went through extensive training already in law enforcement. But as a detective, I had not done any work. I knew a few guys who were detectives, and I'd made relationships with them. But the first thing that I did was contact a guy that I know who is a sheriff in Breckenridge, Colorado, who was in the LAPD for 15 years and then retired to Colorado. Well, not retired. He's still working as a sheriff, but exactly. he's in Colorado now. And we started talking. He does a lot of detective work. So we started talking, and I was fascinated by, in the script, the character was sort of narrative implement, is what I would say, as detectives often are. They're the ones to ask the questions, be the eyes of the audience, and so forth. Right. And this guy, I was interested in him being a question mark himself. Because most law enforcement that
question mark because he seems like a haunted man, or what?
There were 2 reasons for it. I mean, one, I think any great detective has to be infatuated with the criminal mind in order to probe it, and then at the same time want to bring it to justice. So really love the people that he's working to try and find or solve the case for. You know, so I there's that, and then I think most of the detectives I met, some of them actually had criminal pasts themselves. And I think that I decided that Detective Loki had his own, so that when he would walk into a scene, it was, speaking of tension, already filled with tension in the past that he was ashamed of and trying to hide from his own truth while trying to bring out the truth in somebody else. And I just found that inherently fascinating.
The LA Times said Detective Loki is one of the more complicated police presence on the big screen recently, moving beyond the conventions of the typical screen gumshoe. Loki is a man brimming with confidence but boiling with rage, as firmly convinced of the need for justice as he is frustrated by his inability to bring it about. That's
the interesting thing about playing a detective. If you do enough research, if you spend enough time, people who do the job for real, you know, I think you get the sense that what is driving them is individual for each human being. It's like, you know, we can make generalizations about a doctor and say, but each person came to that job for a specific reason. And I and Denis found those specific reasons for Loki. And I think because of that, it kind of pushes away the generic, and we get into the specificity of an actual human being.
We should say it's a brilliant performance by Hugh. I mean, stunningly. You know, you literally feel how on edge he is, and the rage is within him, and at the same time, the sense that if I don't get my daughter, no one will. So and I will forever be doomed to guilt if I don't do it.
Yes.
Hugh was very, very inspired by the screenplay in the first place, and I felt that for him, it was a challenge. I felt it was a way to get out of his comfort zone and to explore new dimension of the spectrum of his talent, of his acting spectrum. Yes, so it was very. It was a privilege, and it was very exciting to see him working on set. He was very generous, totally committed, and the chemistry between Hugh and Jake was fantastic. Yeah. At one point, I took the decision I never work. Roger Deakins and I, we approach cinema with 1 camera usually. We don't like to work with several cameras, but with those 2 guys, we decided to work with 2 cameras in order to be able to capture their fantastic tennis game, I should say, when they were playing one against each other. It was for me, because the rule was that once the scene was nailed, they were free to improvise and to get out of the frame of the scene in order to create chaos and poetry in front of the camera.
This is where they're talking to each other. Here it is. You're trying to keep them under control there.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Trying to
what
make
you
sure it
see is
doesn't-
the emotional versus the analytical in that situation. It's really, as a law enforcement, you have to follow the rules, and those rules actually have led to solving many crimes. And with any experience, you know that. There's also a completely justifiable emotional response that he's having in that. And something that's very hard for me to contain is that I understand somewhere, not empathetically, but I understand that he's really tried at this moment, and I want to be there for him in a way, but it's impossible for me to do that because it would affect the case, and at the same time, he might be the person who did it for me. I say I'm not crossing anybody off my list,
Yeah.
and there are a couple of takes where I said to him very specifically, "Good performance."
Yeah.
Basically, with not saying those lines itself, but good performance, but you could also be the person. So that was important. I know Denis and I talked a lot about this. It was important to establish everybody being a suspect, for me in particular, but hopefully for the audience, and even Loki himself, even the detective himself. So, yeah, that was what was always at play. Denis says often that this movie is about the institution versus the individual, and in this moment, it was like I'm representing the institution, and Hugh Jackman's character Keller Dover is representing the individual, and it really is emotional versus analytical. And if they work together, as you often say, we could probably solve things either quicker or even get them solved.
The thing is, what is interesting in this scene as well is that, and you don't talk about it, is the arrogance of the policeman, where we feel from a father point of view that this young cop, a bit, arrogant, with the way he's trying to handle the situation, can make a father a bit lose his temper.
Yeah.
And that's the tension that I loved, because I think that your character is struggling with the fatherhood figure, and that's something that this tension was very alive in the scenes where I was putting both actors together.
I mean, you clearly did not want us to focus to somehow come to some early conclusion as to who the guilty person was who'd been kidnapping the kids, and wanted us to, in a sense, go up blind alleys and the rest of it.
That was the beauty of the Aaron Guzikowski screenplay.
Right.
It was really, the screenplay was really written like a maze. But again, for me, it was not, this tension was so well constructed in the screenplay, I just had to follow it. What interested me was the way the characters were dealing with those decisions, those choices they were making in contact with that violence.
Because it's a kidnapping of children, were there places that you thought, I've got to make sure I don't go beyond here on this? Did you self-censor yourself?
Yeah, the thing is, specifically, I had a lot of talk with Hugh Jackman about this, how we felt a strong responsibility, because when you deal with so sensitive subject matter and you are making at the same time entertainment, it's like, for me, I was trying to really to be authentic and faithful and respectful in contact with such a drama, and to make for me, entertainment is a thing, but it has to be meaningful. It has to say something about our society today. It cannot just be entertainment for the sake of entertainment. You understand what I mean?
I do. When in selecting, first of all, doing enemy, and then is it the enemy or an enemy?
It's enemy.
And enemy, just enemy,
Just
right?
enemy,
In doing enemy, Steve McQueen was here, who works with the same actors a number of times. Is that something you like to do because you find somebody that somehow represents and understands? And if it's
I'm trapped. Where is my agent?
Yeah, right. Yeah, get me out of here.
Honestly, I love the beauty of cinema.
Not at all.
No, but the beauty of
You feel
cinema.
obligated
Starts
to
talking about cinema now. You see
right. Get me out of here.
No.
Yeah.
I'm deeply inspired by that man, and I think Jake is a fantastic actor. Seriously, and it's just I love the beauty of relationship in cinema. I love a team working together.
Kind of an
to create,
ensemble.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the whole film crew. There's something so beautiful about all those people working together, creating a higher intelligence and trying to create poetry together. And so, to answer to your question, I love to build relationship in time. And Jake is an actor that I'm a much more better director when I work with Jake.
There you go. This is, again, you'll see Jake in this scene where he hunts down a suspect named Alex Jones, played by Paul Dano. Did Roger Deakins bring to this?
A lot. A lot.
What didn't he bring to this?
Yeah,
That's the real
exactly.
question.
I was deeply influenced by Roger Deakins as I was making this film. For me, it was like going back to film school. It was the first time I had the chance to work with a master, someone who was, as a kind of, I must say, Roger hates when I say that, but he has a kind of genius with light.
he hates that.
He does.
Now, are you watching all this thinking someday I'm going to direct some stuff too, or do you even think about that far ahead? Because you seem to be a student of all this.
I do. I am a student of all of it. I think it's I mean, the process of making film is extraordinary. I mean, and I think, yes, the answer to that question is yes. I think working with someone like him, he allows me into that process. He's not threatened by it.
Yeah.
And
Same thing with Roger, the cinematographer.
Roger, as an actor and just as someone who loves film, being in his frame is an extraordinary lesson, because he is obviously telling a story, as most great cinematographers are, right, and he's helping him tell his story. But what he's doing is, when you talk about clues, that entire scene we just saw is in silhouette, most of it. And the only moments where you get clues that maybe you should pay attention to is when that light kind of shines on my face a little bit, or it shines on Paul Dano's face, or you get moments, some things are hidden, some things aren't. And there's a puzzle that's being played with light in this entire film, throughout the whole film. I mean, to know the story like I do, I mean, I know exactly who does it the whole time when I'm an audience member watching it. Right. Even more so than if it was my 5th time as a normal audience member watching it. I know exactly because I was there. But to see the work that Roger Deakins does, to deflect and to reflect, and I mean, I know those are all lighting terms in a way, but what he does is mind-blowing. I mean, he makes you a better actor. And I don't even know how that's like possibility. I mean, it is possible to do with light, but it's just amazing that from one section of movie making you can do that. You really can.
There's a lot of rain in this movie, a lot of mood.
Is that okay? I apologize.
It's Montreal's fault. It's its influence on you.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Did you want to make weather an element of the film?
Yeah, the thing is, I wanted with Roger to create that kind of a claustrophobic environment where we will feel that the weather and the frame and the camera are putting pressure under the shoulder of each character to phase the tension.
Can we talk about torture now?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so Hugh Jackman takes it into his own hands, and there is the torture scene, more than one. I mean, you don't just take it and take one blow. You extend it. You want us to feel almost what the character's feeling.
As I said before, I hate violence, and when I shoot it, when I agree to shoot it, I want to show the impact of it, the ugliness of violence, and from the victim's point of view. And very often in cinema, violence is depicted as a show, as an excitement. But I want to show the impact of this and its ugliness. That's the way we tried to approach it. And I must say, there's a lot of suggestion in Prisoners. Most of the violence, you don't see it, you just feel it. But we had to go graphic 1 or 2 times, and I believe then that we have to have how can I say, the courage to go all the way, even if, honestly, I hate that.
So here you are, and you have great actors, you have a great script, so what the hell did you do?
Survived. No, you're right, it was a chance. Yeah. And I was keeping saying to myself that if it was my only American movie, this would have been a fantastic experience, because it was, I was very lucky.
So
I was
what
spoiled.
do you want him to do? I mean, he's your director. What do you want from him?
The thing about Denis that's extraordinary is that oftentimes, first of all, I always think, and as I watch directors, the hiring process is probably the hardest part as a director. Yeah. And it is what makes, in a lot of ways, it's 50% of the job in that way I can see. And it is a skill that is honed over a lot of experience. And so, I think 50% of his job is just the hiring of the people, which he did incredibly well. And I think it's also an amazing manipulation also, because to feel safe as an actor, I mean, to get this group of actors to be in this movie, particularly, to get people to play what they have to play, which is violent people, sometimes insane people that they would find despicable as human beings themselves. You have to tell them that the space will be safe. And not only tell them that, but create that safe space. And smart actors will know, even on an initial meeting, whether or not that space will actually be whether that will be a truth, you know?
Yeah.
And he has this amazing way. And he also has this thing where he never says no to an idea. Sometimes he will. He'll say no, and that's very paternal in a way. But then he feels like he will always let an idea wane into nothingness over time. He trusts that if the idea is not right for the movie, it will sort of fade and die. And that is a beautiful feeling, because you never feel like you're being stopped immediately. Your instinct's not being stopped. I think he does that with everybody, and I think he has an extraordinary visual sense. Like, I would see these shots when we made Enemy. You know, he would let me roam free as an actor, and the shot would always be beautiful, and the context and the tension of the scene would always be there. That is inexplicable. I don't even know how somebody has that ability, but it's just that he knows the story he wants to tell, and he's sure of it, and the hiring and then the telling of it is just like little taps here and there until, you know, he's in the editing room and he gets to cut it all out and make the movie he wants.
This is the best time of your life, because I mean you've been on theater, you're back in movies. This is a movie that's going to get a lot of attention. I mean, do you feel like?
That's exactly the feeling. That I couldn't even explain it better myself. Yeah. Yes, that's the feeling. It feels wonderful. And Denis was the beginning of this time in my life where he said, come over to Canada for a little bit and come and do some exploring of like the psyche and the craziness and the stuff we have inside of ourselves. And I was game and ready. And since I followed that, I feel like my life has flourished. You know, and so yeah, during this time now, it feels really good. I feel very happy as an artist about the choices and the people that I'm working with. Really blessed.
It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Denis. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, sir.
The film is called Prisoners.